Hello! Welcome to this week's video. For this week, I am doing my wrap-up for the month of September. These are books that I finished and that I read, and either like finished in the month of September or just started and in the month of September, and either finished and or DNF'd. So I'm trying to think of like which one to start with first. Let's start with the DNFs first. This one was a little bit of a disappointment because it's Victoria Alexander and I usually like her. It's the Shocking Secret of a Guest at the Wedding. And it just didn't grab me because it seemed more about, and like it dragged a lot in the beginning because it seemed more about the hero's parents, and because the mother, like the hero's father, who he thought was dead, turned out to be not so much dead, and she never told the father that she had born him a son. So the long beginning seemed to be like more about that, and then he goes back to the father's country with the father to I guess sort of like get to know the father and like run. I think he's like the heir or something to something, and then that's when he meets the heroine. It just didn't grab me. It just didn't grab me. If you wanted to write a story about the parents, then write a story about the parents, because it just dragged the beginning, dragged a bit. So yeah, sadly, this one didn't grab me. This one I DNF'd. Charlotte Vale Allen's Night Magic. Now, I really liked the beginning of this book. I did. And it's sort of very much a Phantom of the Opera kind of retelling. Then it sort of like a little bit veers away from that, because we have Eric, who's disfigured and who has lived a solitary life for the most part for like most of his 30 years, because parents died in a car crash that he was also in a part of when he was, I think it was 4. And so he's very sort of emotionally stunted, and that's sort of why it didn't bother me too much when he met the heroine, who at the time he met her was 16. But I could tweak it sort of a little bit in my brain, because he had lived such a solitary life, and he didn't have like he was an architect, but he lived sort of like solitary, and he lived this very removed from society existence, and he ran his business sort of like in that way where like everything was like by phone, and he didn't really do face-to-face meetings, and he just sort of worked only at night because he didn't want to go out in the daylight, and it was a whole thing. And then the heroine, Marissa, comes into his life, and she is just this bright light of all the good things, and he is transfixed by her and just like amazed by her, and he just can't stay away from the goodness and light that she exudes, and he just wants to possess her and just be around her like all the time, even though he thinks that he shouldn't, because of the life that he lives. Like, he doesn't want to live in society. He wants to stay hidden away. So he tries to fight his growing feelings for her. And she, of course, is immediately, like, head over heels for him because he's this mysterious figure, and he, like, pushes her away, but he doesn't push her away. But he's pushes her away, but he doesn't push her away. And it's sort of like that thing that if you're 16 years old, you eat that shit up. You eat that shit up because you don't know any better. They give in to their feelings for each other. And again, Charlotte Vale Allen, she was pushing it. She was pushing it when she had them having the sex. He was 31, she was 16. But again, I tried to put it like in my brain, he is not a normal 31-year-old man. He is severely emotionally stunted. He was not raised with the morality and societal expectations of like what is right and what is wrong. And he's just this very damaged human being. So fine, I was willing to go along with like why she couldn't have made them wait until she was 18, I don't know. 17 at least. But no, 16, they're doing the thing. Okay, fine. But I was willing to go along with it. It was, again, beautifully written. Beautifully written. The point where I DNF'd it is when her father dies. I think it was a heart attack or something. His father dies. And they're supposedly, they think that they're keeping this relationship hidden from everybody because society, rightfully so, would not approve of a 31-year-old man in a sexual relationship with a 16-year-old girl. Her father dies. And her father leaves him a letter basically telling him that he knew about the relationship and that he couldn't think of a better man to stand by his darling little Marissa's side and be the because he wrote this letter. Obviously he wrote the letter before he died, but I'm not sure why. I don't remember why, like, when he was planning to give him the letter, I don't remember. But anyway, the letter is found, and the father is basically approves wholeheartedly of the relationship, which, no. And there's a point where the housekeeper, Kitty, I think her name is. Kitty? Yeah, Kitty. Basically says, yeah, I know what you and Eric are doing, and I'm not gonna the housekeeper, grown-ass woman, says to this 16-year-old girl, I'm not going to judge your decisions because you've always been the type of girl who knows her own mind. And so if you think that this is right for you, then I'm going to support your decision and wholeheartedly, embrace this relationship that you're having with this 31-year-old man. And mind you, Kitty was in love with the father, and they were having a relationship with the father. And since I don't want you to judge my relationship with your father, I'm not going to judge this relationship that you have with Eric. No. And Kitty is pretty much because Marissa's mother obviously had died when she was a baby, and Kitty pretty much raised Marissa. so Kitty is like, and Kitty falls in love with the father, and they are having a sexual relationship, and they're in love with each other, and all this. And so Kitty is like, I'm not going to judge you, and Eric, I know Eric is a good man, and as long as he makes you happy, and no, because that's when I DNF'd it, after like the approval of the father and Kitty, because it was one thing to go along with Eric and this situation, and Eric has one sort of friend / employee that does all his like outside errands for him, because Eric doesn't, if he can avoid it, he doesn't leave the house. Raskin. And Raskin is all cool with it too. But again, I was willing to kind of give Raskin a pass, because he was sort of had his own issues, and he was suffering from PTSD from Vietnam. But when the father and the housekeeper were like, oh, it's all cool, I was like, nope, I'm out. Because it's one thing when these emotionally damaged characters are alright with being in this relationship, or with Eric being in this relationship with a 16-year-old girl. It's another thing when fully formed and mature and of sound mind and body adults are okay with it. What Charlotte Vale Allen should have done was have the relationship be discovered, father not be okay with it, housekeeper not be okay with it, have Marissa and Eric split up, like keep them apart, and then later, when Marissa is an adult, they reunite, and the relationship goes from there. That's what should have happened. But that's not what happened. Everybody's all hunky-dory with it. They end up, Eric, Marissa convinces him to, like take like baby steps out into like the world, and like sort of be more like in society, and they end up getting married. I'm like skimming like the last bit of it, because after the okay from the father and the housekeeper, I just sort of like skimmed the rest to sort of like, just for my own, satisfy my own curiosity and see like where this hot mess was gonna go, now that everybody's sort of like okay with it. So like what conflict could possibly be. And there's like no real conflict until they're married and they're together, and she gets raped by somebody. Yeah, she gets raped by somebody, and she's so ashamed, and she doesn't want to tell Eric, and so she like leaves him, and it was just stupid. It was just stupid. So yeah, definite, like, I'd call this a tentative DNF, because I did skim like the last bit to sort of see my own satisfy my own curiosity. Finished. Oh Lord. So that was a book. That was a book that I read. A beautifully written book where so much happens and yet nothing happens. And I can explain it by saying that so much happens in the sense of like, it was just the characters of like every generation behaving the same exact way as the characters from the previous generation, and then like they're like going about their lives, and it's like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this person got married to this person, and then this person got married to this person. So a lot of things happens, but nothing happens. Nothing happens in this book. And yet so much happens, because it's about the saga of the same family and their descendants over 100 years. I I hated everyone in this book, with the exception of the matriarch Ursula. She was so badass. I loved her. And the two girls named Remedios. I hated the first Aureliano because they all, for some stupid reason, Gabriel Garcia Marquez decided to give everybody the same name, all the descendants the same name as the person before him. So all the first Aureliano, his son was named Aureliano, his son was named Aureliano, and why? And I've decided that magical realism is not for me because I don't get it. I don't get the point of it in conjunction with like the plot. I don't get the point of, there's a scene with like a bunch of like yellow flowers taking over the house, and there's a scene where like one of the characters dies and his blood like runs all the way like down to the street and down into the main street and down into the like. I don't understand the point of that in conjunction with like the story and like the plot. I don't get it. But the one character that I hated beyond measure was Colonel Aureliano, the first Aureliano, because he decides, because he was a pedophile. That's why. Again, this was 100 years, so like, this was like back in the olden times, and I understand, like, they got married younger then, and like all that stuff, fine. I could make my peace with like olden times 15, 16-year-old brides. Anything younger, you're a fucking pedophile. I don't care. And he decides that he must have, he goes to this house, and dude has like all these daughters of age, that would be perfect for Aureliano. Does he choose them? No. He instantly is attracted to and falls in love with a 12-year-old girl who has not even hit puberty yet. She has not even had her period yet. She still plays with dolls. And this is the woman that this piece of shit decides that he must have and he must marry. So he does. And he gets her pregnant once she's had her period. He gets her pregnant, and I believe she dies. Because she's 12 years old and cannot maintain a pregnancy. Her body is too small. So this innocent, poor little girl, dies because of this pedophile piece of shit. And yet, there's no consequences for that for him. He is lauded as this, like, colonel, and is, as this, like, great man, and just, nope. And then there is this other, so he has a son, and of course he names him Aureliano, because of course he would. And he has a daughter who he names Remedios, because of course he would. Why wouldn't he? And what's the mother's name? Fernanda. Yeah, Fernanda. So he marries Fernanda, and they have a daughter named Remedios, because of course they do. And Remedios falls in love with a guy that the mother, does not approve of because he's like poor or what have you, or is not worthy. So they end up shooting and paralyzing the poor boy. And then the mother sends her daughter off to a convent. And this piece of shit son, Aureliano, who's as big a piece of shit as his father was, who supposedly Fernanda was jealous of the close relationship that Remedios had with her father because she was the apple of her father's eye. But all of a sudden, when Fernanda sends Remedios off to the convent, this father who adored his daughter beyond measure doesn't do shit all to bring his daughter back. He's just like, oh, okay, she got sent to the convent. I guess my wife was right to do it. I'm not gonna like bother myself about it. And yeah, she just sends her daughter in exile to a convent. I hated this book. I hated this book, even though it was beautifully written. Again, beautifully written. I got to the end after like 17,000 Jose Arcadias and 17,000 Aurelianos and 17,000 Remedios and Rebeccas and Amarantas and just no. So I annotated it, and it's pretty much just filled with my rantings and ravings. My dear cousin, who passed away, he was a reader like I was. God rest his soul. God rest your soul, dude. But no. 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 So, yeah. So that was that one. Every time I look at this, like, I'm keeping this book because it was my cousin's, and there's a couple of other books on here, but I think this is the only one that he had that was in English. I think the other ones are in Portuguese, but I'm keeping it, and just every time I look at this book now, I'm just gonna be like, no. The next one I read was Lisa Kleypas's Because You're Mine, and I loved it. Loved it. Even though, again, this is the story of Lady Madeline Matthews, and she is being forced to marry this old douche nozzle named Lord Clifton. She doesn't want to marry him, so she decides that she's going to ruin herself by having an affair with an actor named Logan Scott. And Logan Scott is in the true Lisa Kleypas tradition, Logan Scott is a hell of an alpha hole. So much an alpha hole. Because he was abused as a child, and so has up this wall that he keeps everybody out, and he has his affairs with women, but he, is unlikely to take a wife. And yeah, he is just horrible to her, but he ends up like having happy pants for her, and that makes him more horrible to her because he's mad at her for giving him the happy pants. And they, I believe, she ends up getting pregnant, or she tells him that she wants to have an affair with him. Now, okay, she doesn't tell him why, but he was full aware that she wanted to have an affair with him, and they, he is unable to resist her, so eventually they do. And then he finds out that the reason he wanted to have an affair with her was because she wanted to be ruined so that she didn't have to marry this Lord Clifton dude. And he gets all butthurt about it. Now, it is not her fault that you, who said you did not want, that you were like having this relation, that you were having the sex with her, and you said that you didn't want a relationship, and she told you that was okay, because all she wanted was to be, she wanted to have an affair with you. Fine. And he gets all butthurt about it when he finds out that she was using him to avoid being married to this dude. Which I thought, I didn't, like, I was not okay with the fact that he was all, like, hurt about it. Because it is not her fault that you actually genuinely happened to fall in love with her. She was enamored of you and, like, fell in love with you, but, wasn't going to tell you that because you said you didn't want to have an affair. Like, you didn't want to have, a relationship. It was you. And then you are mad because she initially only wanted you for your body. She did develop feelings for you, but she wasn't telling you that because you said you didn't want it. You were like Jon Snow. Game of Thrones. I don't want it. And then you get butthurt when you find out that she was only using you. When you find out that at first she was only using you. So he's like, I want nothing to do with you, and blah, 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 and he treats her like the alpha hole that he is. And then turns out she's pregnant, so now they have to get married, and he's still treating her horribly, and he's, basically, like, makes her feel like all he cares about in her is the fact that she's carrying his child. And there's, like, this subplot with this secret that, this woman knows, like, the truth about, like, who his mother is, and, like, that the abusive pieces of shit that raised him were not his birth parents, and that he's actually the son of this dude, this Duke or Earl or whatever, whose son is actually best friends with Logan, but who has, like, alcohol and gambling problems. So there's, like, that whole, like, subplot, and I'm nitpicky about how much of an alpha hole Logan was, but okay, I'm reading Lisa Kleypas. I know of what I am immersing myself in. Lisa Kleypas does the alpha holes like nobody's business. But when we get to, like, the end, I wanted a smidge more of a little grovel. He does sort of, like, there's a point where, he's being mean to her, and he's being, like, horrible to her, and she's sort of taking it because, the, people around her are sort of like, Logan, like, he's a good man. He's just been, like, very damaged, like, give him time, let him, like, see that he can trust in your love, let him, like, regain his trust in you, and, just be patient with him, don't give up on him, blah, blah. So Madeline is taking a lot. She's taking a lot of his crap for a long time. Finally, her give a damn is busted. Her give a damn is just busted, and she's like, F this shit, I'm out. I am not letting you treat me like a doormat anymore. I'm leaving, And then Logan is like, at this point, he's been fighting, trusting her again and loving her again so long that he doesn't want to he doesn't want to fight it anymore. But that coincides with her give a damn being busted, and she's like, I'm out. And he grovels. I'm not gonna say he doesn't grovel, he grovels, but then he turns it into that the reason that he was still like being so cold to her and mean to her was that part of like what he learned was that his birth mother died in childbirth, and he was afraid that she was going to die in childbirth. So he thought, his bright brain thought, that the smartest thing to do would be to keep Madeline at arm's length and not allow himself to love her, so that way when she died, it wouldn't destroy him. He's stupid. He's a big stupid. Because she's like, okay, so now, like, do you honestly believe that if I die in childbirth, it will hurt less if we're not together? And he's like, I don't know. I'm emotionally stunted. He didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing. I have issues. So he tells her that, like, he forgave her for her betrayal a long while, but that the reason that he was still being cold to her was because he was afraid that he was going to lose her in childbirth. Is this stupid? But okay, so I wish he'd groveled a little bit more, and that wasn't the reason that he was still being cold to her. I found it a little bit not my favorite reason, but I still loved the book. I still loved it. Yeah. Really, really loved it. Would still recommend. If you like alpha holes. If you don't like alpha holes, don't read this book. Because, oh my god. He very much, yeah. He is the vintage Lisa Kleypas alpha hole. And now we come to the book that I finished yesterday, which I half loved, and that is Recipe for a Perfect Wife by Karma Brown. I half loved this book. It is one of those dual timeline novels where we have Alice, who has moved from the city to the suburbs with her husband because of his job, and she's a city girl, so she's not so much for the suburbs, and she bitches about it a lot, and I supposedly loves her husband, but I don't see it, and so her story I wasn't that interested in. I skimmed most of her story. When I got to, like, it was like the first or second chapter, and she's bitching about the house and all the things wrong with it, and just being a basic sort of poopy pants towards her husband. But yet, every once in a while, she throws in, like, the author will throw in that, like, she kisses her husband and tells her husband that she loves him, and, you know, is, like, smiling at her husband. But the rest of the time, like, for them, like, it felt like Karma was trying to convince me that Alice loved her husband, but I didn't buy it. And she wants to, you know, write. She wants to be a writer, and she wants to write her, you know, novel, and she's not ready to have children, and she feels pressured by her husband to have children. because she doesn't want to have children. But does she tell her husband that she doesn't want to have children? Not that I read. I read that she secretly got an IUD without telling her husband and almost dies because of it, and that she secretly, something from like the company that she worked for, I don't know if she was a lawyer or what, but that she was getting sued as part of something to do with the company from this guy. And does she tell her husband that? No! But apparently she loves her husband. But, so I skimmed all of like Alice's story. The story that I did love was the 1950 story with Nell and her piece of shit abusive husband, Richard, who, so Alice finds this box with like this cookbook, cookbook and like magazines with like letters in them, and from about this housewife named Nell who lived in the 50s, who was in this horrible marriage with this abusive man. And I'm gonna spoil it. Should I spoil it? Yeah, I'm gonna spoil it, because I would say save yourself the trouble. If you're gonna read this book, read it for Nell's story. Because Nell, I loved her story and sort of her dealing with this abusive husband that she has, and she doesn't go all burning bed on him, if you know that movie. She kills her husband. She does, but by poison. Nell loves to garden, okay? She loves to raise the flowers and the plants, and she loves to do all that stuff with herbs. Herbs. And then, oh dear, how did my husband die? I loved it. I loved it so much. If I could, I would like rip out all the Alice bits, because they're sort of, Karma Brown is sort of trying to parallel Alice's dissatisfaction with her own life with Nell's dissatisfaction with her marriage. No, not the same. Not even remotely the same. Alice is in this marriage with this man who, from what I can tell, was a very nice man who, wanted to be in a marriage with his wife, loved his wife, wanted to have babies with his wife, was trying to make the best of a situation where his job made him go move into the suburbs, and he was just trying to make the best of the situation. He was optimistic, and he, thought that it would be a good thing for them. Does Alice ever tell him, no, I don't really want to live in the suburbs? Not that I read. Does Alice ever tell him, no, I don't really want to have a baby right now? Not that I read. Does Alice ever share with him, I'm kind of being sued by, this guy who was part of, the old company that I used to work for? Not that I read. So, all of Alice's, dissatisfaction and pressure was self-created, because she didn't open her mouth and use her words with her husband. Nell was being beaten by her husband. Not the same at all. So, I loved half this book. If I could rip out all the Alice bits and just keep the Nell bits, this would be a perfect book. This would be the recipe for a perfect book. Yeah. Alice, your recipe for being a perfect wife? Talk to your fucking husband. Use your words. Nell, in 1956, had more balls than Alice, a supposedly modern woman, in 2008. I said what I said. So I loved half of this book. So, Audible, nothing that I remember. What did I read in? I tried The Importance of Being Alice by Katie McAllister. Did not work for me. The Secret His Mistress Carried by Lynn Graham was started off really well, and it was about this. Sorry, let me bring it up here. So yeah, it's Billy. So Giorgio was in a relationship with Billy, and did she know? No, I don't. Yeah. So they were in a relationship, and unbeknownst to Billy, Gio was a little bit married, and so when she finds out about that, she leaves him. And but oh noes, the stick turned blue. She ends up being a little bit preggers and leaves him for like a year or something, and has his son, but of course doesn't tell him about it because why would she? And that was like all fine. Like he ends up like showing back up. He still doesn't know about the son, but he ends up showing back up and finding, because he's in love with her and obsessed with her, and he's divorced his wife and he wants to be with Billy, but he has to find her, and so he finds her. And that was like all fine and good, and I'm like, okay, I was really enjoying it. Until I got to the reason Billy left. And the reason that she didn't tell him about her son was because when they were together and they were having the sex, Gio tells her that the worst thing, that basically tells her, you better not get pregnant, because that would be the worst. That would end things between us. That would destroy things. That would destroy things between us if you were to get pregnant. Now, mind you, he's probably saying this because at the time he's fucking married. But that's when I DNF'd the book, because I'm like, you, Gio, she's not getting pregnant on her own. If she did end up getting pregnant, but just at the point that he said this, you're having sex with her. If she does get pregnant, she's not doing it by herself. So what the fuck are you putting the pressure on her not to get pregnant? I DNF'd it. DNF'd. No thank you. Gio, you can go and right off into the sun. And yeah. Which was sad, because up to that point, I was totally in love with the book. Totally liking it. So I only got, I think, like a few chapters in. But yeah, I was optimistic. But nope. That did not end up working out well. So, what am I reading right now? I am going to be starting, I'm halfway through Elizabeth Gaskell's Ruth. Still loving it. Yep. Still loving it very, very much. And I'm going to be starting my work read, my commute read, I call it. Will be Roseanne Bittner's Unforgettable, and I guess I'll read the back blurb for that for you. Orphaned at a tender age, sassy, streetwise Allie Mills fought her way to the dusty plains of Oklahoma. No one was going to keep her from her dreams of independence, not even tall, rugged Ethan Temple. The Cheyenne half-breed I know! Shut up before you start. The Cheyenne half-breed stirred feelings deep inside her, tempting Allie to surrender to his strong embrace. Was Ethan a man she could trust? Willing to cherish her without taming her? A lover who could satisfy her, body and soul, without trying to conquer her wild heart? So that is Roseanne Bittner's Unforgettable. I love Roseanne Bittner's books. I have Thunder on the Plains on my keeper shelf, and I read another one of hers in ebook, and I think it was called Untamed Heart. Excuse me, or something like that. Loved it. And this will be my third, I believe, Roseanne Bittner book, but definitely not my last. I'm sure of it. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be starting. So that's going to be it for this week's video. Have you read any of these books? I would love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, so it was a good reading month. I read, quite a few books, more than I think I usually do, which is really, really good. Even if you count the half reads and the I still count it. I had a good reading month. So that's going to be it for this week's video. Follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/authorejamie. Like my Facebook page at facebook.com/authorejamie. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!